The first time I saw her, I was convinced the caffeine in the spaceport's recycled coffee had finally betrayed me. Not because she was alien, though technically she was, but because she walked with a confidence that suggested she owned the entire station and maybe the sector beyond it, long ears swaying like elegant antennae tuned to the universe's private joke line. Everyone had warned me to stay away. "She's trouble," they said. "Don't even look at her." I was already a believer in following rules, except apparently my instinct for self-preservation had a 2-hour delay, and by the time I noticed her, she had already slid into the seat across from me without asking. She didn't even flinch at my startled expression, which probably made me look like a space fawn caught in a solar flare. "You're staring," she said, the faintest quirk of a smile tugging at her lips. Her ears twitched in amusement, and I swear they were synchronized with some hidden metronome only she could hear. I mumbled something inarticulate, a hybrid between a hello and a plea for invisibility, but she ignored it, leaning back and tapping a finger on the edge of the table like she was conducting an invisible orchestra. Around us, the spaceport was a circus. Robotic cargo drones tripped over their own appendages, aliens of every conceivable shape argued about customs forms, and a vendor shouted about Martian squid tacos that probably defied at least 3 intergalactic health codes. Somehow, all of it seemed funnier because she was sitting there, perfectly composed, like the chaos had RSVP'd specifically for her amusement. Her name was apparently something unpronounceable in my human tongue, so I stuck with ears in my head. I don't know why. It just seemed polite in a universe where polite was relative. I tried to act casual, which, as it turns out, is impossible when a being who looks like a human, except for ears that could double as satellite dishes, is staring at you. "So you're not here to arrest me?" I blurted, because nothing says first impression like involuntary humor under pressure. She snorted, an almost musical sound that made the warning signs from my colleagues seem ridiculously overblown. "No, I don't arrest humans," she said. Then she paused, tilting her head, and added, "Unless you're particularly annoying." I laughed, which was an accident, and immediately regretted it when a nearby maintenance bot tripped over my foot, sending a small crate of energy cells rolling across the floor. She leaned forward, her long fingers curling around a stray crate like it weighed nothing, and casually redirected it back to the loading bay with a flick of her wrist. "You'll want to pay more attention to the bots," she said, smiling again, and the twitch of her ears made me realize she found this situation infinitely entertaining. I tried to respond with a joke about human incompetence, but my words tangled and fell somewhere between helpful and hilarious disaster, which only made her laugh harder. We spent the next hour in a bizarre game of proximity and commentary. Every time I tried to get up, she'd block me with an elegantly raised eyebrow and a subtle shuffle that reminded me of a chess master moving pawns I didn't know existed. Every time I said something about the absurdity of spaceport life, she countered with a quip so sharp I considered enlisting her to handle corporate disputes back on Earth. Somewhere between dodging a drone carrying a live pet nebulan and narrowly avoiding a hover tray of glowing beverages, I realized that the universe had a sense of humor, and she was its punchline. By the time we ended up at a snack kiosk that advertised synthetic asteroid burgers, she had learned 3 things about me. I was terrible at guessing alien currencies, I had an alarming fear of zero-gravity puddles, and I laughed too easily at the wrong moments. She took this in stride, twirling a strand of hair that glinted like starlight in the artificial illumination, and muttered, "You're surprisingly human." I almost asked what the alternative would be, but the thought was interrupted by a hover tray delivering burgers that attempted to float away from me like mischievous moons. I reached for one, and she flicked it gently back onto the tray with a precision that made me suspect she could disarm a warship in under 5 seconds. "Here," she said, "gravity is optional, but manners are mandatory." I wanted to ask why she had come to sit across from me in the first place, but the question seemed too mundane, too linear for this moment in the absurd, humming chaos of the station. Instead, I followed her lead as she guided me through corridors that looped and spiraled like the inside of a Möbius strip, pointing out every security camera, maintenance hatch, and suspiciously wobbling light panel with commentary that oscillated between sarcastic and delightfully deadpan. Every time I tried to interject with a serious observation, she countered with a joke so layered I couldn't tell if she was mocking me or the universe itself. When we finally stopped at a viewing platform overlooking the docking bay, I noticed the stars beyond the reinforced glass glimmering in impossible colors, nebulae swirling like ink in water, and the faint silhouette of distant ships that seemed alive, thrumming with their own tiny economies of chaos. She leaned on the railing, ears catching the light, and said, "See that?" Her finger traced a ship that looked like it had been designed by a drunken AI. "That one's stolen. That one's probably haunted. And that one," she tapped a triangular vessel, "was last seen arguing with customs about the rights of sentient luggage." I laughed, partly at the absurdity and partly because it was impossible not to laugh when someone could deliver cosmic commentary with the precision of a stand-up comic and the gravity of a starship captain. By the time the artificial lights dimmed to simulate night, I had learned more in a few hours about navigating an interstellar hub than I had in years of training manuals. I also realized that she had changed something in me, something that had nothing to do with her alien physiology or twitching ears, and everything to do with the way she could make a universe this big feel smaller, warmer, and hilariously unpredictable. I wanted to ask her why she chose me, why she ignored all the warnings, why she came and sat across from a human who clearly couldn't keep up. But words failed, and for once I didn't care. Instead, I just laughed at the absurdity of it all, because if an alien woman with ears that could pick up cosmic frequencies could make me laugh while robots, cargo, and questionable cuisine collided in zero-gravity chaos, then maybe, just maybe, the universe wasn't entirely serious. And that was how it started. The warnings, the fear, the spaceport chaos, all colliding in a single moment where gravity, etiquette, and sanity became optional, and laughter was mandatory. By the second day, I was beginning to suspect that the universe had a personal vendetta against me, or at least against anyone who tried to follow rules around her. She appeared as if summoned by some cosmic joke, standing at the entrance of my temporary quarters with her long ears flicking like twin radar dishes. "You get lost in corridors, don't you?" she said, one eyebrow raised, which for someone with ears that could probably hear a star collapsing felt unfairly precise. I wanted to deny it, but the memory of my accidental excursion into the hydroponics bay, where I had almost been attacked by a sentient tomato plant, was too fresh. She didn't wait for an answer. Her fingers, long and nimble, traced the navigation panel of my comm device with a flourish, and suddenly it blinked like it had learned a new joke. "You're going to need me," she said, "unless you want to be trapped in Sector E for eternity, arguing with a vending robot about whether it's ethical to serve reconstituted asteroid slime as dessert." I couldn't help laughing. The thought of a robot philosophizing over space food was absurd, but she delivered it like she had seen it happen countless times, which somehow made it funnier. We moved through the station corridors at a pace I could barely keep up with. Gravity in this section was calibrated differently, which meant I stumbled occasionally, flailing like a drunken meteorite. She glided effortlessly, ears flicking with each turn, occasionally tapping a blinking panel or floating sign with a sarcastic quip about its uselessness. "This corridor is about as helpful as a laser toothbrush," she muttered once, and I laughed before realizing I had no idea what a laser toothbrush was, but I trusted her judgment anyway. Somewhere along the way, she stopped in front of a food replicator and examined the floating menu as if it had personally insulted her. "You humans are obsessed with flavor," she said, her ears twitching. "Meanwhile, the real delicacies are quantum-calibrated energy orbs, but no, you want synthetic asteroid burgers." I picked one up, and it floated just out of reach. She flicked it into my hand with the ease of someone who could probably juggle planets. "Gravity is a suggestion, etiquette is mandatory," she said, echoing words she had spoken the day before. I wanted to tell her that these repeated aphorisms were getting dangerously close to endearing. But I lost the chance when a rogue cleaning drone mistook my flailing for hostile behavior and shot a stream of disinfectant at my boots. She caught my ankle mid-spray, ears flicking indignantly, and I swore I saw a spark of amusement in her eyes. By the time we reached the observation deck, overlooking the docking bays and the swirling stars beyond the reinforced glass, I realized I had learned more about the station's secrets than I ever would from official schematics. She pointed out ships with odd cargo, suspicious docking sequences, and at least 3 vessels that were technically illegal but apparently someone's cousin owns them, which I assumed was a galactic euphemism for bribery. "See that one?" she said, flicking a finger at a ship with a hull that shimmered like liquid mercury. "Probably stolen from a retired warlord, also haunted. You can hear it whisper if you squint." I laughed until I coughed, and she tilted her head, ears flicking as if she found my human amusement charmingly primitive. Then came the cafe. a zero-gravity establishment where drinks orbited in colorful loops and noodles behaved like tiny spacecraft. Patrons argued over the ethics of feeding quantum cats, pets that existed in multiple places at once, while a holographic waiter offered advice on how to avoid getting flattened by floating desserts. She guided me to a table, ears flicking nervously at the spinning chaos. "Sit," she instructed, "and try not to inhale a noodle." I tried to comply, but one particular noodle looped around my neck like a mischievous comet. She snickered and flicked it gently away. "Humans," she muttered, "predictable, chaotic, and very entertaining." Lunch became a series of small disasters, each punctuated by her calm interventions and sarcastic commentary. A floating beverage nearly hit my face. She caught it midair and quipped, "Gravity optional, eye contact essential." A rogue tray of snacks tried to escape past the edge of the platform, and she swatted it like a practiced cat burglar. I laughed again, realizing that every time I tried to act competent, she quietly reminded me of my utter ineptitude with a smile that made me forget any embarrassment. Afterward, we wandered toward the maintenance tunnels, where the hum of the station's life support mixed with the occasional burst of steam from a cooling conduit. She moved through these areas like a shadow, ears twitching in tandem with every echo, while I stumbled behind her like a particularly clumsy moon. "This is where the real work happens," she said, tapping the walls lightly. "Security cameras, bot patrols, and oh yes, the occasional sentient pipe that hates intruders." I nearly jumped at the hiss of a valve, but she grinned. "Relax. It only bites on alternate Thursdays." I snorted, trying to maintain dignity, which failed spectacularly when a maintenance bot tripped over me again, and she caught me mid-fall, ears flicking in amusement. By the end of the day, I realized I wasn't just learning about the station. I was learning about her. Her humor, always hovering at the edge of sarcasm, her intelligence, hidden behind casual gestures and playful jokes, and the subtle way she made even the most chaotic circumstances feel navigable. She noticed things I didn't, predicted hazards I hadn't even imagined, and yet never made me feel inferior, only like a companion in a universe that delighted in testing its visitors. She laughed at my mistakes, but never cruelly. Her amusement was an invitation to keep going, to keep exploring, and most dangerously, to keep trusting her. When we finally paused at a viewing balcony overlooking the bustling station, she leaned on the railing, ears catching the neon glimmer of distant ships, and said, "You're learning fast for a human." I opened my mouth to respond, but words failed me. The chaotic day, the floating noodles, the rogue drones, the sneaky quantum cats, all collided into a singular realization. I was enjoying myself. Terribly, irrationally, and completely. Her presence had transformed the ordinary into an adventure, the dangerous into a game, and the absurd into a lesson in surviving the universe with laughter intact. And when she flicked her ears again, a movement so subtle it might have been mistaken for wind, I realized that despite all the warnings, despite all the fear, despite the rules and absurd cautionary tales, I had willingly followed her into the chaos, and I didn't want to stop. By the time the third day rolled around, I had stopped counting how many warnings I'd ignored, how many near disasters I'd survived, or how many times her ears had twitched in amusement at my human inadequacies. She found me asleep in a corner of the observation deck, curled up like a dehydrated starling, and raised an eyebrow so sharp it could have cut through the station's reinforced glass. "Still alive?" she asked, though the twitch of her ears suggested she already knew the answer. I muttered something incoherent, probably a combination of yes, maybe, and don't kill me, and she laughed, a sound so warm it made the recycled coffee taste sweet for a moment. She extended a hand, which I took cautiously, and we were off again, navigating the station's tangled corridors with an ease that only she possessed. Today, the chaos felt more deliberate. Drones zipped past us carrying cargo, some of which was alive, or at least argued like it was. Holographic signs flickered messages about mandatory bioscans, while a group of Martian tourists argued over whether space jelly counted as an edible souvenir. She sidestepped everything with a grace that made me look like a prat falling through zero-gravity hoops. I laughed every time I nearly collided with a floating crate or misjudged a gravity field, and she always had a comment ready, usually sarcastic, sometimes wise, and occasionally both at once. "Humans," she said once, catching me mid-stumble, "the perfect mixture of chaos and charm." Our first stop was the zero-gravity cafe again, which had apparently decided that day to serve noodles that spun faster than the station's centrifuge. Patrons were floating around, chasing their food like tiny, confused satellites, while holographic waiters debated existential philosophy with each other. She guided me to a table, ears twitching with amusement. "Try not to eat a noodle in orbit this time," she said, smirking. I did my best, but a rogue noodle looped around my neck, and she flicked it off with a precision that made me suspect she had once been a combat instructor for Starship crews. "Still learning, are you?" she teased, ears flicking in perfect rhythm. I laughed again, realizing that I was no longer panicking at every minor disaster. I was adapting. After the cafe, we found ourselves in the lower maintenance tunnels, where the hum of the station's life support was punctuated by occasional steam bursts and the whine of patrol drones. She moved like a shadow, ears flicking at every sound, while I followed, slightly less clumsy than before. We passed several hazards: a sentient pipe that tried to spray us with water, a security camera that winked like it had a sense of humor, and a rogue robot that insisted on challenging me to arm wrestling. I won barely, and she applauded, the twitch of her ears betraying her mock surprise. "Humans," she said, "capable of surprising things if they don't trip over themselves first." The real adventure began when a misrouted cargo drone collided with a maintenance panel, causing a localized blackout. Lights flickered, alarms buzzed, and the station's automated security systems went into overdrive. I froze for half a second too long, but she grabbed my arm and yanked me forward. "Stick with me," she said, calm as ever, ears flicking like twin radar dishes. Together, we navigated the chaos, leaping over exposed conduits, dodging floating energy cells, and laughing at the absurdity of robots chasing us as if it were part of a galactic sport. Somehow, amidst the chaos, I realized that I had changed. I no longer panicked at the unexpected. I adapted, laughed, and even found joy in the absurdity. By the time we reached the observation balcony overlooking the docking bay, the alarms had quieted, and the chaos below was returning to a semblance of order. She leaned on the railing, ears flicking, and pointed toward a small shuttle preparing to depart. "That one," she said, "carries cargo someone forgot to declare. Technically illegal, but spectacularly amusing." I watched as it lifted off, trailing sparks like a miniature meteor, and realized that my perspective on the universe had shifted. What had seemed intimidating, chaotic, or dangerous before now felt like a challenge I could meet, especially with her at my side. She turned to me, her long ears catching the neon glow of the station lights, and said, "You've learned fast for a human." I wanted to deny it, but the truth was undeniable. I had learned to trust, to improvise, to laugh at the universe's absurdity, and to navigate dangers I never would have survived alone. I laughed quietly, a sound of relief and recognition. "And you," I said, "aren't as terrifying as everyone says." She tilted her head, eyes sparkling, and replied, "I told you that the first day." We spent the final hours of the day in quiet observation, floating in zero-gravity corridors while the station hummed around us. She rearranged holographic starlight projections to form smiley faces, and I followed along, laughing as my attempts at humor failed spectacularly, but were forgiven by the light in her eyes and the twitch of her ears. For the first time, I didn't feel like a human lost in the galaxy. I felt like a companion navigating it, learning, surviving, and laughing with someone who had changed the rules of the universe for me. As night, artificial though it was, settled over the station, she finally sat next to me in one of the observation seats. Her ears twitched lazily, ears catching the neon reflection of distant ships. "So," she said, "what have you learned?" I thought for a moment.